hang. Rendering. Well, hello. Oh, you didn't pull out the tape measure, did you, Mike?
Yeah.
What kind of show are we about to get into today? I wasn't prepared. I just got out the pool.
This life-size JAMAR.
I'm larger than life, brother. Y'all know that.
Yeah, I was mailing out stuff, so I had to measure my boxes today.
Oh wow. You know what? It's funny. We could maybe just start talking about that in a second. About how difficult it is to just get something in the mail these days. You know, just like costs of shipping, and even just even buying things, and then you find out they just get it shipped to you is going to cost more than the item. All that kind of stuff.
That's why a lot of people make money is their shipping.
Yeah, that's how they get you. That's exactly how they get you. But you know how we get you? By having you tune into this magnificent live stream, because we're cutting the podcast out, right, Steve? We're going to start afresh, start anew.
Oh, wait a minute! It's this podcast right there, though.
Oh shit! All right. Well, next week it'll be the Pencil to Pencil live stream. Welcome, you guys, to Pencil to Pencil, your favorite weekly live stream / podcast. Well, all right, give me a break. Brought to you every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST by expert cartoonists. Because you know what? Somebody last week said we were talking heads, and I got a little offended by that.
What? Which one of us is David Byrne?
I don't know who said it. I'm not going to put anybody out there. But, I think it's really important that people understand beyond just this, this fantastic setup we have. Like everybody's reporting from a studio where they're making work, and people pay all their light bills with the work they create.
I have a whole body here.
Right, I was a little triggered by that, because it's just like, how many podcasts out there and live streams are brought to you by cartoonists and not just like fans?
None.
No, there's a couple, like Cartoonist Kayfabe is one of my favorites.
Are they really cartoonists?
I think they are. But, a lot of these things are kind of brought to you by people, what's up, D-Brad, who are just like fans of the work, or fans of comics, or fans of animation and stuff. And I think the conversations go differently because they're from a different perspective, which is different from somebody who's already in the business talking about all that good stuff. So the chat is starting to fill up, but let me do our introductions. Hello, everybody. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS, Philadelphia, born and raised cartoonist. And in this new book space I'm in, they call me an author illustrator. Right. I have a series at Scholastic under the graphics imprint. Leon the Extraordinary is out in stores now. The next one will be out this time next year. I would be remiss if I did not introduce you to our next co-host. He is the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. He goes by Stone Cold, Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Good to see you guys. If you're looking for my webcomics online, you can find them at middleagecomic.com and over on Webtoons and Tapas and Go Comics and pretty much everywhere. It's good to see you guys. I just got back from Free Comic Book Day, but I think I would be remiss if I did not tag in
a hot tag.
Tower of Power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour.
Bring me in, Steve. Come on.
The masked marvel of mark making, Mr. Mike Manley.
Oh, I forgot my mask.
That's a lot of M's.
Yeah. I'm sort of like a Stan Lee creation. Mike Manley.
I love the Stan Lee invitation. That's my favorite.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Mike, what do you do? Well, currently.
What do? I draw 2 little comic strips. One called The Phantom, the other called Judge Parker. And then I'm just drawing all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly drawing.
I still marvel at the fact that you do 2 legacy strips at the same time. I don't know how that works, but it's
naps are involved. Naps are involved.
Lots of naps. I love it. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We have a really exciting show for you. We have Erik Larsen, who's in the wings. And I'm going to give a second. I won't bring him in just this yet. But I have been pestering Mike for a while to get Erik on the show. Like, we get Larsen in. All right, let's see. And one of the coolest things about having this platform and kind of being around so long, because I don't want anybody to ever forget that this podcast slash live stream, I keep saying podcast, was birthed from Draw Magazine, right? And we all know.
Tough birth.
I thought you were going to lean back in your chair for a second. I got nervous. I didn't know what you were going to do there. And as a lot of you know, that Mike is the editor-in-chief of Draw Magazine, published by Tomorrow's, where I was also a columnist and your crusty critic, taking over for Andy Park.
You're the crusty columnist?
The crusty columnist. And, that was kind of like a mainstay of a lot of comic shops. They're like, yo, we got the new Draw in. And people would just like drink that. But just with the change in times and the change of doing print magazines and stuff, we kind of turned this into like a new format. And I think it's really been working well. We've been doing this for almost 4 years now.
Over 4 years now.
Oh my goodness.
We went past our anniversary back in the spring. It's over 4 years now.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I still get people asking about if I still do the magazine. And they're all, of course, eternally available from tomorrows.com. They're all available as PDFs now. But yeah, a lot of things changed. And I would say like the last 4 or 5 years, if you notice when a lot of art magazines disappeared, a lot of magazines disappeared. And just the whole revolution because of podcasting, I think a lot of things that were like specialty magazines, sort of went to the side. And distribution for magazines is really difficult. One of them, Borders went away. Yeah. When Borders went away, it's sort of back we talked before, like it with this distribution when Capital City went away. Right. 20 years ago you had several retailers, and now you have several again, but for a while you only had one. What was the same thing when Borders went? That really hurt a lot of magazines, because then B. Dalton's went, like all these bookstores, you remember when you would go into the mall one by one, they all went away. Right. And when each one of those went away, the numbers went down. Yeah. I mean, and not to get too much into distribution, and there's still people who are like, well, how come I can't find comics in, my 7-Eleven anymore? They don't sell magazines anymore in the CVS. You get your Easy Rider in the
my Guns and Ammo,
Iron Horse or whatever, they would always have like these weird, like sort of biker magazines in the 7-Eleven up by me. They don't have any there anymore. Now you just have adult diapers or something.
Now, I told you guys a couple of weeks ago that my father-in-law was here, and I was trying to find him a newspaper. And I went to like 6 or 7 places just trying to find a paper. Like
Wawa? They didn't have the Wawa?
I didn't go to Wawa, but I should have. I got my Wawa shirt on tonight. But I was at a gas station. I was like, yo, where's all the papers? And I don't know why I wasn't acting like it wasn't 2023. But they're like, yo, baby, we don't sell those anymore. You got to go to the supermarket. I'm just like, yo, it's real. So, but, all of that aside, the live stream has kind of revolutionized what we're doing. And the content is still there. It's still rich. And we give you, besides just
rich,
we give you great content every week for free. And you can't beat that price.
Well, we will take donations.
Well, now that we finally crossed over 1,000 people, I guess we can start getting super chat in here, but we're not going to do all that. But I would love to bring in our guest. Mike, do you want to give Erik a little intro?
Well, he was one of the, I guess, major artists, I would say, of the 90s. Spider-Man, one of the co-founding fathers of Image Comics, a guy who loves comics, and you can tell he loves comics when you look at his comics, right? There's so much enthusiasm in Erik's work, which you can't always say about every cartoonist. Some people you can really tell they love, and he's been doing the Savage Dragon for what, 300 or 400 issues?
I think it's close to 3. Yeah,
Coming up on 3.
Coming up on 3 really soon. Yeah.
Which I don't think that there is another creator-owned comic that's been drawn only by one person. That in comic books,
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's guys who did comic strips for 50 years, but in comic books, no one person has done that much work consistently, which is striking when you really think about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we have him for 90 minutes, so we're going to have a great fly on the wall conversation. If you have something you'd like to ask Erik or any of us, please put it in the chat. I am going to be closely curating the questions tonight because I don't want to burden Erik with stuff he's heard a million times. Like, why do you hold a pencil that way? We're not doing that tonight. We're only doing the good stuff. The creamy nougat of a conversation is going to happen tonight. Hey, David, good to see you. David Peterson, one of our regulars in the chat. Oh, so yeah, he's Sergio, Dave Sim, and Sakai. Have they? Well, all right, we can talk about that. All right, I'm gonna bring Erik in. Erik, put your face on. We're gonna beam you in. All right, you guys. Welcome to Pencil to Pencil, Erik Larsen. Render. Look at hey,
I saw those hands there. That's not how you hold a pencil.
Well.
I know better than that.
You should have done a special one just for you. Yeah.
Sorry about just the claw.
So we've got R&D on it. We'll have that fixed by next week. So appreciate that. Thanks so much for coming on, Erik. I've been talking to people for a long time, and I've been on my own journey, as we all have been for a long time. And there's like weirdness that starts to happen where, and I'm sure you and Mike have probably heard it way too much, when people say things to you that you can't answer, like, oh, you're a legend, or you're my childhood, you know what I mean? Or like how do you can't really respond to that.
Yeah, there's nothing to say.
Right. So like
sorry, your childhood sucked.
So I wonder, is there a place that you kind of like, gently like nod and thank people for that, but you don't really like to get that kind of praise from people?
I mean, you appreciate that people like what you did, but I mean, yeah, that's like I don't know how to answer that. But I've gotten that. I get people on Facebook all the time who will just be like, "Hey, what's up?" And it's like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, if you got a question, I'm happy to answer it, but let's not go down the what's up rabbit hole, because there's a lot of stuff that's up.
Yeah.
I'm not your best source for that.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes I think back when I would met Al Williamson, or you met Jack Kirby, and you think of the age they were when they did certain things in their career, then you think about yourself at that age. And I know it doesn't make sense in some ways, but it seems like when they were our age, they were older. You know what I mean? It's like they seemed like they were more.
Well, certainly they were more mature. I'll give them that.
That's true. But I was thinking Do you ever think about that? I mean, do you ever think about?
Oh yeah, all the time. I'll just be sitting there going, okay, when Jack was my age, he was drawing. All right, he had just come back to Marvel and he was doing Captain America's Bicentennial Battles or whatever. It's like, all right.
Yeah. And I often wonder if it is because in that way, in a way, that generation was very different than ours, mainly because almost all those guys served in World War II or Korea.
Yeah.
And that's not common at all in our generation of people having been in the military.
Yeah. Well, also it was really, there was no royalties and you're paid by the page and it was a job and people weren't getting their original artwork back. So there wasn't like, oh, I better do this super sweet thing so I can sell it later. It was, I want to do good enough work that it'll continue, that this book can continue because that's my regular gig. But there wasn't the, I'm gonna sell this page for $10,000. So I'm just gonna spend my whole day on this. And so these guys often were just grinding it out at a crazy pace.
Yeah. I think if you work for EC, I think EC paid $35 a page or something in the early 50s, which was actually pretty good money.
Which was awesome. That was good. That's good money.
Yeah. But then he kept your originals.
Yes, but everybody else was too. That was standard operating procedure. And DC not only kept them, but sometimes destroyed them. They would, and then, or would give them to people who were taking the tour of the, hey, come take our tour. Here, have an issue of Green Lantern. Holy crap. That's awesome. It's like, okay, yeah, originals just didn't have any particular value. I think a lot of artists were like, don't even send me that back. Conventions weren't really a thing, so there wasn't an easy way to dispose of it if you were getting stuff back.
Yeah. We talked about it before. I know Williamson had that great collection because he knew the guy at King Features, a guard. He basically bribed the guy to let him in. So he basically took the stuff that they were going to throw out. And there was a lot of guys like Salinas, the guy who drew the Cisco Kid, who lived in Buenos Aires. So he never asked for his artwork back because he didn't want to pay the shipping to ship it from New York down to Buenos Aires. And I think some of the guys who lived in New York, the strip guys, would go in occasionally. I think Leonard Starr went in. I've seen a picture of him going in. And I know Frank Robbins was so far ahead. He was like over a year ahead on the strip. So he had them at home just stacked waiting to send them in. So yeah. The only guy I could think of who wanted his art back was Frazetta.
Well, Steranko got a bunch of his stuff back. I know he went in. And
Right.
then Neil Adams was sort of a one-man. I'm not going to do any work unless I get this back or something at one point.
Yeah. Well, didn't he say, I seem to remember reading where he was in there one day and he saw them like cutting stuff up, like, oh, I can't fit this in the garbage can. I can't crush it up and fit it in the garbage can.
They're putting a razor to it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, let me cut it up and put it in the garbage can.
Yeah, they just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, during the 70s when Jack was doing work for him, he would do these beautiful double-page spreads, but he would do them on single sheets of paper. He'd just get bigger sheets. And DC would cut them in half because they were like, oh, we can't fit, we can't photograph these, they're too big. So we're just going to cut them in half, photograph one. There's one double page spread from Commandy where they cut it and they cut it like an inch off of where it should be. So they just taped it and cut it again. It's like the original.
Oh.
The original just looks like hell.
So is there a part missing in it?
No, they just taped it back.
Oh,
They just
okay.
put tape on the back of it. So the original is kind of ugly, and it's got a big hunk of tape on the back. Some of his Marvel spreads are still intact from the Captain America or the Silver Surfer book or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess
You're
they
right.
had a bigger bed or something to photograph things.
Well, that was one of the big changes. What was it, 66, 67, when they went from the
yeah.
original size, the old original.
Yeah. I know those are old and big. Those are great.
Yeah, and as I heard it, was because they changed the stat camera or something, the way that that stuff was photographed. So in order to do that, that's why they suddenly reduced the page size from the old size. It had something to do with the
I thought it was just a cost-cutting thing, like, oh, we can photograph 2 pages at once if we do them a little smaller.
that might have been too, because I know I worked on an old stat camera. In high school, we had an old stat camera. A couple of my first commercial art jobs, we had the old stat cameras, and they were bigger. And then they got a new one, which was like a third or more smaller. So the film was smaller. So, yeah, I think they used to shoot twice up. You know, when you start getting into the weeds on all the old production stuff, it's you really realize that they didn't look at what they were looking at as like a piece of artwork, you know, which is like this is just a thing I need to make this other thing, you know.
Well, it's the same kind of thing now with animation, where I think people working in animation, they're not getting that artwork back at all. And it's just, well, we need to do this in order to make this thing, which you can see on a cartoon.
Well, you know, that changed too, because
that's true. That's probably all done digitally now, huh?
Yeah. My last, I did the last storyboard on paper I did in 2011, I think. And then that's when everybody started using I stopped doing boards. And that's when right after that, they switched and started doing everything with the Cintiq. But I have some of my old storyboards, because sometimes I would mail them in depending upon the show, and sometimes not. And now everything is there are no more paper boards. So all those great Batman and Superman cartoons that Bruce Timm and those guys worked on, where the boards are just beautiful drawings. I mean, like, they were putting Zipatone on them and everything. It was crazy, you know.
Well.
So
change, man.
Yeah. So talking about that, has your process changed much in the course of your career, or what would you say has changed the most?
Well, I mean, when I started off, everything was lettered on the board. So that process would be, you know, I got to draw a 20-page story and then send that off to a letterer. So my process then was I would lay out the whole story, and then I would send it off to initially Chris Iliopoulos. And so, the day that I sent him the pages, I would stay up that night and script half the book. And then he would get the pages the next morning, letter the easy ones, and send them back. And then that second day I would script the second half of the book, and then FedEx would deliver me some more pages, and it's like, okay, I'm working now. So the whole process would be, okay, let's get inking. Years and years and years later, I don't have to send stuff to anybody. Now that the lettering is being done digitally, art doesn't leave the house. And so at that point, it was like, well, I don't even need to draw this at the same size anymore. I can I can draw big. I can do twice up. This will be awesome. All the artists used to draw twice up. I can do it that way. This will be cool. So I started, and just after the time that I started getting lettered on the boards, or on that, I started just going, I'm going to work any size. I'll work really tiny, see how that works. That looks terrible. Let's do really big, see how that works. What if I do issues where I vary the pages? So I did a couple issues where I was doing some pages really tiny, some pages gigantic. And I was just all over the place, and I would resize it all. So when the letterer got them, as far as they were concerned, they were all the same size. But that opened up a lot of things. Like, oh, I can do all these different weird effects different ways. And then you find out what works and what doesn't work, and why you shouldn't do this or that. It's like, well, it's literally twice the real estate, so it's a lot more space. But it helped out with all my secondary characters, all the small ones, because when you're working really big, those can be tighter and better little figures. But you also can just get lost in the image, where you're just going, oh, I started at the top, I worked down to the middle, and I worked down to the bottom. And then you pull it back and look at your figure and go, that just didn't congeal as a human. They're like, their top is way too big and their legs are too small. Or you just go, oh, that's screwed up. So, ideally you kind of work out in rough form and then kind of step back and get a good look at it before you're committed yourself. So there's some trial and error with that stuff.
Right. But also when you have the lettering on the board, you get to consider that as part of the composition, right?
Yeah. Well, that's true too. But when I'm drawing anyway, I'm doing that because I don't have the dialogue, but I know there's going to be words here. And there'll be something here. I'll come up with something for these guys to say. Sometimes I'll write it in the margin. Sometimes I'll just go, I'll remember this, and then I don't, and have to come up with something else. But I used to write like bullet point plots for myself. So it was like, let me keep this on a single sheet of paper was my goal always. And more recently, I just don't do that because it's like, I know what I'm doing. I have an idea where I'm going with this. And
Erik,
what would happen when I was doing that anyway is I would go, I've allowed a page for this. And then when I'm drawing, it's like, oh, that really needs 2 pages. So then it would be, now how am I going to cut the rest of this to have it make sense? And so it was always a problem anyway. But now I'm just winging it.
Well, Erik, I had a question about you kind of keeping yourself excited, kind of like, let's draw it this big, let's draw it this small. And just knowing how a lot of people are just creatures of habit. Was there, was that interesting for you to just mix it up for yourself rather than just, kind of doing the same thing every month to month?
Well, I like to change things as much as possible, just so that it doesn't become this mind-numbing routine. You can get into this rut of stuff, and that can be debilitating too. Where you're just going, really, I have to draw this same goddamn explosion again? Oh, if I have to draw another close-up on that guy, I'm gonna scream. Yeah. But that also can be, there's so many parts of this that can just be debilitating. You're just going, holy crap, I don't want to draw this same thing that I've drawn a million times before, but I need to do that because I need to get to the next page, and the next page needs to be this.
Steve, you want to throw a couple questions at Erik?
Well, I was wondering about because the length of the series is just, so it's like, almost unprecedented, or maybe is unprecedented. But there was a kind of reinvention of the series a couple of
Well,
times.
the book is set in real time, so characters keep getting older, and it's been going on for 31 years. So in some cases, they're getting a lot older. So like when the series started, Dragon was a single guy, and then he had a son, issue 33, and now his son is the lead character in the book, and has been for a while actually. And the Dragon character died in issue 225. So I mean, he died like blew up into a bloody pulp, died, and we saw him in heaven. Look, this place is all right, you know. So
When you
so
started, how did you balance? When you started issue 1, were you thinking, okay, 31 years from now, I have a sense of where this is going to go? Or how much of it was, I have a sense when I look at your work, you're kind of leaving it all on the page. Like you're not leaving anything. You're not you don't seem to be holding back. It's always, it's all there. So the idea that you can keep your fuel tank that filled all this time is astounding.
Well, when I really started really early, I had done comics myself when I was a little kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had done all these super cool comics when I was super little kid. And the end of that period was when I was getting into being a professional comic book guy. I did a fanzine called Graphic Fantasy. And that was just sort of the end of my old Dragon comic stuff. So he was, at that point, he had a little kid, and he was a single dad, and his wife had just been brutally murdered, and he used to be the head of a government super team, and now he was, you know, just watching out for his little girl, but villains keep bursting into his house looking for revenge and stuff like that. So that was age 19, me just drawing my final, like, this is kind of the culmination of everything that I had done up until that point. So when I started in Image Comics, I thought, you know, what'd be cool is if I work my way towards those stories that I did in Graphic Fantasy. I'll eventually redraw these stories and incorporate them. But instead of doing all the immature bullshit stuff that I did when I was a little kid and had no understanding of the world, I'm going to start at a different place and work towards that same thing. So eventually these events are going to coincide, but you know, in order for him to get to be a government super team guy, I'm going to start him off as a police officer and go that route. And then eventually I'll be able to work these stories in. So in terms of that, I had an initial idea of, well, I know he's eventually got to get a kid somehow, and I know he's got to get a dead wife somehow. And I know he's got to be part of this government super team at some point. So I had just a shit ton of characters I created as a little kid. So I'm like, I got to introduce these guys pronto. And when I started the book, it was like, let me get him in there as quickly and as possible. So you read that first issue of, hey, here's this guy doing his solo character in his solo book, introduces 43 characters in his first. It's like, what the hell's up with this guy? So
I thought that was so great. It felt like you guys had just so much freedom to do this. It's the stuff that editors would have said, no. And I love that. I love that.
Well, I'm sure anybody thinking of doing, you know, real time in a comic would just be like, no, we can't do that. Spider-Man's got to be like dating forever, you know? And even now it's like they're tried to undo that marriage so many times with Mary Jane. And it's like, we want him to be back to being a swinging single dude. How can we get back to that? And it's, you don't want to progress anything, but I'm sitting there going, God, let me get past that part so I can get on to this other stuff, because this other stuff's juicy to me, you know? There's some cool stuff coming up.
Hey, Eric, we have a question from our good buddy Andy Kuhn. What's up, Andy? Andy says, Eric, have you now incorporated all of your early stories into the book, or you still have a ways to go?
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, I have. I'm so tapped on that. There's also I pretty much forgot it all.
Mm-hmm.
So once I was going, it had been 10 years since I did stuff when I was a little kid. So, you know, I kind of stopped with the graphic fantasy. I was 19 when I did that. When I started Image, I was 29.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, 10 years had passed, plus my house had burned down in the interim. So all those stories that I did when I was a little kid, they're gone. Like, I couldn't refer back to them if I wanted to. And it had been several years since I'd even bothered to flip through those crappy hand-drawn comics that I did as a kid. So recently I just did an issue where I brought back like the graphic fantasy version of the dragon. So he's got this crappy little fin and all this, and he's got the old crappy backstory. And I did an issue where I'm like, I'm going to tell everybody about how things went in this guy's reality. And I went to write and draw that issue. And I'm like, God, I don't even remember at all. I just have no idea. So I ended up just kind of making up something that I thought made some sense with a little bit of, oh yeah, I remember this panel and I remember this little bit, but not enough of it. So I don't think there's really much that I could incorporate that wasn't flat out stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's do this. And it's like, oh, no, there are no dog sleds in the desert, you idiot. Like, oh.
Now, Eric,
I was 10. I had no idea.
I think it's interesting, and I can't think of another case where someone, it's sort of like when you guys started Image, you could do anything you want. And I'm trying to think of like another example where someone did something as a kid or a younger version and then was like brought it back or updated it. That's sort of.
There's been a few. There's
probably,
been a few.
probably like Bone.
Yeah, just Smith and Bone. I don't know that Todd ever drew any Spawn actual stories, but I know there were drawings of Spawn he did as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't quite look like how he ended up looking. He changed him around a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there must be a few others.
But it's still, I mean, it's usually.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. It's
Yeah.
pretty rare.
Yeah, because I mean, most people draw their own knockoff version of whatever
Yeah.
they like
Yeah.
until they get to work with Spider-Man or Batman or
Yeah, I can't do Batman, so I'm gonna do my Batman. It's like,
Right,
all
right.
Whatever. But Dragon is my Batman because he started off as a Batman ripoff, believe it or not.
Did he have a cape?
Yeah, he had a cape. He had a mask. He pulled down a mask, and it was a green mask, and he had a Caucasian face underneath there. And instead of the bat ears, he just had this little turd that was draped over his head. But it was like a green cape, and then he had a utility belt that he never broke into and took anything out of, that I can remember. And he had a cool car, and he had gloves with little triangle things on them, just like Batman. He didn't have a dragon cave, but at least that I remember.
Did he have a butler or an assistant of any?
No, he didn't have any of that. He was kind of a hippie dude. Yeah, I mean, my dad had a beard, so it's like, I'm gonna give him a beard. This will be cool. It's like, all right.
But yeah, it's not that most people sort of draw. I would even see that when I would teach. You would see people when they do animation. A lot of times they're doing sort of like a knockoff version of the stuff that they watch.
Yeah.
Right, hoping that eventually they would be able to work on the real thing. But I guess maybe that's real. That's probably the most common thing. You do your version of Superman or Batman or Spider-Man or
Yeah, and eventually it becomes something else. Like, eventually Dragon became something else. He wasn't a Batman ripoff anymore after I've done him enough. And the same thing is true with a lot of the other characters. And they eventually go, oh, that guy's not really that guy anymore. He's become something else because you've worn out that idea completely.
Well, now, have you met a young cartoonist who's doing the same thing? They're drawing their version of the dragon until they get to work on the real dragon.
No, I think people know that I'm in it for the long haul. Yeah, I don't think anybody's got the illusion that someday this book is going to open up and they're going to be able to work on it.
So you never thought about doing that, like having a special where you would have other people do Tales of the Dragon or something?
I mean, there have been weird things like that, and I've had people do backup stories, right? And had other guys draw them all the goddamn time. And often it is fans, and I've kind of let people know, hey, there's a bunch of pages at the end of this book. I can either fill them with ads, or essentially these stories are fan art. But it's like, if you want to do a story, you can either make it up yourself, or I'll give you a plot for something, and you can draw this up, and then you'll have a story that's been published, and you can show that to the next guy, and off you go.
Erik, how often do you have? Because I know you really interact a lot with your Facebook page, and also the letters page of Savage Dragon. You have a really heavy fan base that you interact with a lot. How often do you kind of like pull somebody in that is really interested in being a cartoonist, or giving somebody an opportunity? How often does that happen with you?
Oh, I don't know. It depends. Well, sometimes it seems to happen a lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't happen for a long time. It really varies. There does seem to be stuff that manages to materialize every month that I can shove in the back of the book. So whatever that is. And sometimes it's just somebody doing their own weird thing, and they're like, hey, what do you think of this? I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. You want me to run it in the back of my book? I've got pages. And I'm like, all right, that would be great. Can you send me a copy? And I'm like, I'll send you more than one. I'll send you a bunch.
That's fantastic. There's a question from where'd it go? Damn it, I just got rid of it. I might have to come back to that. It was kind of about your process of kind of keeping all this stuff straight. I'm going to look back for it. JRD said it. But the question was kind of, I'm sorry, was, how do you keep all this stuff straight? Like, do you have a database? Do you have a bunch of notebooks?
There is a wiki that has everybody in it. So if I'm using one of the old characters that I've done before, I can look them up and go, when did they last appear? How old are they? So sometimes becomes an issue. With Dragon's son's kids, or Malcolm's kids, I've got birth dates for them so that I can go, okay, how old is they now? Oh, that character is 5 now. Oh, so she's going to be starting kindergarten in the fall. Okay, great. Now I know that I need to be doing that.
Wow. Do you? I used to read the letters page a lot in your books, but do you have a version of a no prize, or like some
I
people?
don't, because I don't want to nail anybody.
Right. But do you have
I'll
fans that?
stand in line at the post office for nobody. That's not going to happen.
But it seems like your fan base is more helpful than trying to stump you. Like, you know, they're like you guys are all in it together versus
Yeah, they're kind of part of the club, and
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if you start pointing out mistakes, we're going to be here a while.
That's fantastic.
And I mean, and some of that no prize stuff was just kind of silly anyway. But I don't know. I've screwed up enough times. I had a villain that had a different name 2 issues later because I couldn't remember what I'd used. It's like holy crap, that's pretty bad.
Wow. Wow.
He's like, I'm the Devastator. 2 issues later, I'm the Demolisher. And it's like, all right.
Well, you know, he did get some blows to the head, you know.
Some CTE, yeah. JRD has another question in the same space. Eric, I remember reading about the fire and was glad no one was hurt.
No one was hurt in my house. There were 25 people who died in the fire.
Holy
wow.
shit.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know all that. Did you try to rebuild your collection of old work via interviews that had reprinted your childhood Dragon material? Or did you just let it all go? Like, did you try to rebuild any of the stuff you
Well,
loved?
Several members of my family had copies of Graphic Fantasy, which is the fanzine that I published. So that was my greatest source of material. And then there were Megaton I did work for them real early on. And so there was some stuff there that I could go, okay, there's characters in the background there. I remember that dude. But other than that, it's hard to dig up any of that stuff. And you just forget it over the years. It's so many years go by that, you know, unless it's fresh and it's in your face and stuff like that. Early on, I made a shopping list of, okay, I know I did 55 issues of Sergeant Marvel's Greatest Comics. Issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, and just trying to list like what was happening in every issue. It's like, I don't remember it all. And that was 30 years ago. And I started putting that list together.
Right, it's got to get harder.
I know most of my villains were super lame. They would just be like, I couldn't care less about them. I was really into my superheroes, so I was always like coming up with cool new superheroes. And then my bad guys would just be like, I've got a beard. You know, it's like, there's nothing cool about you. Oh, I don't have any hair on my head and I've got a beard. It's just like, God damn it. That's not cool enough, you know? And I had a lot of, you know, oh, he's my brother, or it's an evil twin. Look at him. So when we did Image Comics, it was like I gotta really up my villain game, and that I just ended up creating like just tons and tons of guys because I gotta do it.
Yeah. Do you have a Boba Fett, meaning like is there a character from Dragon that people love that you were like, oh, okay, I guess I didn't really think about it that much, but something like one of the characters that a lot of people just really love the most?
There are characters that usually it's a real love and hate thing, where there'll be like some characters like, oh, that's my favorite character, and other people would be like, oh, that's my least favorite character. So there's a guy named Powerhouse who came out of my really early comics. Like I created him in like 5th grade, and he looks like a chicken with like a domino mask. And there's no reason for him to be called Powerhouse because he looks like a chicken. And he's got like a Daredevil, you know, Golden Age Daredevil kind of shirt. So it's like half black and half red. And then he's got a Captain Marvel cape, you know, and he's got like Iron Man boots and gloves. And he was really just a combination of different guys. So at one point I was just drawing I had done an issue where I had established like that there was a million guys. So I had drawn like a ton of little tiny panels everywhere. And I thought I'll just stick that guy's head in there as one of the tiny panels. But when I was drawing one of the issues later on, I had penciled everybody out. I was like, I don't know who this guy should be. And I was talking to Jeff Matsuda on the phone, and he was just like, oh, you got to make it the chicken guy. That guy's cool. So it's like, all right, I guess I'll have the chicken guy showed up. And then from then on, it was like, oh, that guy's awesome. You got to have him show up some more. So, but like whenever he's on a cover, sales just take a dip. So like, I think retailers look at him and go, God, this guy's retarded. Sell this thing.
There's a lot of love for Powerhouse in the chat. That's fantastic. Wait, hold on. Our buddy Jamal Flores asks, what's up with Super Patriot? I love that character. He's my favorite Boba Fett.
He's around. I just can't use everybody every issue because there's just too goddamn many of them. I keep killing people off because it's like there's too many characters.
That's
got to thin the herd a bit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's see. We have this one's more of an image question for our good buddy David Peterson. Read Mouse Guard, why don't you? David says, what memories do you have of the Wildcats issue when all the image founders swapped titles from one issue? Was that
fun?
Or stressful? Or like any memories of that?
It was fun enough, I guess. I'm not very enamored with Wildcats as just a concept. I didn't think they were especially cool looking and I was reading the comics like, God, these things are putting me to sleep. These are terrible. All I remember about it was they were using acronyms all the time for every single thing. And there was always these footnotes. This stands for this. This stands for that. So I did that as a gag really early on, where I had a bunch of people just using all these acronyms and BYOB. Hey, that is really but initially the idea was we would all just grab whatever title, and then I wanted to do Cyberforce because I like Mark's characters. I like the design of them, stuff like that. But Mark had chosen that he wanted to do Spawn, and so Todd said, oh, let me just do Cyberforce. That way I only have to make the one phone call. It's like, God damn it.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
So then that's what it became. And which worked out good for both of them because in that case, Todd actually wrote the issue of Spawn. And then I think Mark's guys wrote the issue of Cyberforce so they could really be more integrated and be part of those series. Whereas I wrote my issue of Wildcats and he wrote his issue of Dragon. And I think both of us were like, I'm just going to put my own guys in your book because, this will be a chance for me to promote my guys. So Dragon showed up in Wildcats, and Freak Force showed up in Wildcats, and then he put Grifter into Savage Dragon. Whatever. It wasn't something I was super excited about doing, to be honest.
Sure.
I was just like, I just want to do my book. But everybody else is on board. Okay, I guess I'm doing this.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit more about, I guess, Image then and then Image now? I mean, I imagine you guys didn't think the Image at the beginning would be what the Image is now, right? Where you're publishing
no.
so many other cartoonists' work.
Well, I mean, it's really, really different now, and everybody's really doing their own worlds. So so that, I mean, I like the books that we're putting out now quite a bit, and there's stuff that will come out and I'll be like, oh, cool. I can't wait to read the next issue of, whatever, Black Cloak or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Because I think we put out some really good books, but I do miss the Image universe. I miss the camaraderie of that, and hey, this can appear in this, and we can do crossovers and stuff like that. And there don't seem to be nearly as many guys who are doing books with the idea that, hey, at some point we're going to be able to do crossovers. But I kind of let it be known to anybody who's doing work at Image that, hey, if you want to have Dragon show up, yeah, just do it. Go ahead. And that does happen occasionally. Somebody will go, hey, can I use your guy? And it's like, hell yeah, I want you to.
Huh.
Have him show up now. Let me tell you about him.
And how does that fit into your your production? I mean, you guys are having a lot of people submitting stuff, and then you guys choose, do you guys have monthly meetings? How do you suss through all the zillions of
most things that we are sent cold are dog shit. They're dog shit bad. They're like absolutely amateurish, drawn with ballpoint pen on lined paper bad. Like you just go, oh, you're not in the ballpark at all. You don't even know where the park is. In fact, I don't think your city has a park. Like it's like this clearly is going nowhere. And it used to be that we would be actively recruiting stuff, and people would go to the group, hey, Mike Grell wants to do a book. Anybody be okay if Mike Grell is a book? It's like, oh, hell yeah, Mike Grell's awesome. Let's have him do a book.
Mhm.
Or whatever. And people would be actively trying to recruit guys, and that was going on. Now, and we would vote on stuff constantly. Now it's kind of focused on the publisher, so he's kind of the guy who is doing that stuff. And so a lot of people will be, they'll do a book in Image, and so the next guy will be like, well, I got a buddy, he wants to do a book in Image, and he'll bring him to the publisher and say, what about my buddy here? He's awesome. And then it kind of goes out from that, because it's very organic in that kind of way, where it's a friend of a friend and a friend of a friend. It's kind of all over the place. We're like, well, the artist from this book has a buddy who wants to do this, and so they'll submit that. And the writer from this has another book he wants to do with a different artist, and so that becomes a thing. And so it's not so much of me going, hey, I got this.
Mhm.
And then also, I think all the Image partners can just kind of, if they're going to be supervising a book, they can kind of go, they got their own separate little imprints and stuff like that. I haven't really done it so much. I haven't force-fed anybody much of anything, but occasionally there'll be somebody who hits me up, or who I've done work with, and we have enough of a relationship that I can make something like that happen. But I got enough to do, goddamn.
I just find that's something that most people who are doing a monthly book are also part of a larger group of people that are publishing people's work. So how much of your
it's not a lot. It's some, but there'll be email threads that go along. There'll be occasional phone things where we'll get a bunch of guys on whatever, Zoom or Skype or whatever the hell it is that particular day, and do it that way. But there's not once we're kind of going and the train's in motion, there's not that many things that really come up that need to involve everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so if something's coming up with me, the publisher will contact me and go, "Hey man, this is going on. You want to?" It's like, all right, whatever. A lot of people will email me directly if they want to do dragon stuff or whatever.
There's a good question, because I know you just released, and I haven't got my hands on it yet. You have a new omnibus
Yeah,
series that you're starting, right?
Yeah.
And,
let me grab one of those.
Lift it up, Eric. Let's see it. Yeah.
This thing. You could kill a drifter with this thing.
That's fantastic.
That's a sizable book here.
And there's a question.
Bam.
So how do you have a scheduled plan for how they're going to come out? As I know that one probably took a lot to get out.
It took way more time than it should have.
Yeah.
Also, with the really early volume, I just had tons and tons and tons of sketches and material, because when you're starting a series, it's like, oh, I got a million ideas, and then once you got going, it's like, I don't have 90 pictures of various villains anymore, because I'm using the ones that I came up with earlier.
Right. Our new buddy Frush30, what up, Frush, says, any plans to release a book of original art scans at some point? Kind of like those oversized.
Yeah. That's happening.
Oh wow,
that's definitely happening. Yeah, we'll do as Todd calls it, we'll do a vault edition. We got the vault. With this Spawn, we did the big vault book. We got to do a couple more of them. So, all right. So we'll do that, and I've got a bunch of the Dragon original art, and then whatever I don't have, Robert Kirkman bought for me. So
wow, that's fantastic.
So it's all kind of out there at some point. There's only a couple issues that have been broken up and scattered to the wind. So those, if I had to do one with issue 2 of the ongoing series, it's like, crap, I don't know where all those pages are. But
I know they just made a new thing. This is probably like a year or 2 years ago, of your, I think, was it your Amazing Spider-Man, the Revenge of Sinister Six stuff?
Yeah. They did a book that, one of those omnibuses that collects all my Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Do you have any, I don't want to say fond memories, but are there like bits and pieces that you can pick up from your, in your head of like, oh, I really liked when I was working on that or that?
Yeah. There's stuff I like about it, and then there's stuff that I'm deeply ashamed of, and that's, it's everything. It runs the gamut. There's a lot of stuff where I go, that was a pretty funny line, or I came up with something, and then there's some plot stuff. I'll be like, God, that was retarded. What was I thinking? That was really dumb.
How do you feel about, I guess, fandom kind of placing Spider-Man artists in a rank? Because I know you're pretty high up there in a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man artists. How do you feel about things like that?
Yeah, whatever. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want to, kids.
I love it.
I mean, but if Steve Ditko isn't your number one, then I do not accept the basic premise of your list.
Eric, go ahead. This is great.
It's like he came up with all the cool shit, and you're going to tell me that he's going to be number 5? Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I think
it's like everybody else is ripping this guy off, and he's your number 5. Really, that's it. All those poses you love in this guy and this guy and this guy that you put above him were all stolen from him, but he's number 5. Okay, I got it.
That tracks, actually. That's how people think these days.
Yeah. Well, I think also sometimes with guys like Ditko, it's like a generational thing, because I know younger artists sometimes have a hard time now with Kirby in the way that some people had the trouble with Frank Robbins. You know, you were introduced to this sort of style, this way of this language, let's say,
Yeah.
that is so far removed from your experience. You know, it's
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
nobody wears pork pie hats anymore, right? Things like that. But you know, I actually find the older I get, that guys like Ditko are so much more interesting, because everything he did, from like drawing a doorknob, I mean, everything was like really unique, like a super unique way. Like nobody else did it like that.
Oh yeah. No, like if Ditko drew a panel in somebody else's comic, you'd go, "Hey, Ditko drew that. What the hell? That looks so different." And same thing with Jack Kirby, where you go, "Oh, that's a Jack Kirby city." You know, those architects putting in different size windows and different bricks and all this insanity. That's a Jack Kirby thing. And Ditko's with all his weird, Ditko's cities were awesome and weird. They're just weird. Like, what the hell, man? We shaped this building like a question mark because we think it's cool. All right, whatever.
Do you find, I mean, I talked about this before, that thing about the way Kirby did a city. If you look at New York, it's that clutter of detail that your eye tries to absorb. And then he had that way of drawing it in that marble stuff that looked like New York, or you felt it was like New York. So I remember actually when I first went to New York, I expected to somehow resemble, you know, what Kirby drew. And those old cartoonists really developed such a unique personal visual language. Do you think about, I mean, is that something that goes into your dragon? You know, does it go into
you try to make it so that, you know, every part of it you go, "Oh yeah, I can tell that's a Larsen thumb right there on that guy. Look at that." You know, but you can't always find it. And most of the time it's like, that's not my style. That's me trying to rip off somebody else and doing it so poorly that it becomes my own thing. You know, you go, "Oh, okay. So you were trying to draw Kirby knees. No, that doesn't look like a Kirby knee at all." It's like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah. But I posted, I think it was the Doctor Strange page, but somebody had posted and I reposted it, and it was you know, nobody else would really think of like drawing magic that way.
Yeah, all of that, and so many. They're so individual too. That you go, you know, I mean, when Gene Colan got on Doctor Strange, it was like, that's an entirely different thing. It's just all swirling and shadows and blurs and stuff. What the hell? That is so different.
But as a kid reading all that stuff, as a young fan, it all fits together. You know, you did. You know.
I guess. I mean, it was all kind of a little bit before my time. When time I came on, Jack was wrapping up his DC stuff and coming over back to Marvel in the 70s. Right. So that was really when I was really getting into, like, I'm going to buy monthly comics. Was 5th, 6th, 7th grade is when that started going. But by that point, you know, Hulk was on this 170 something, really, by the time I was buying it regularly. And it's like, so Herb Trimpe was my Hulk guy. I didn't know Jack drew the Hulk until Origins Marvel Comics. It's like, oh wow, look at this. Drew this. That's crazy.
Yeah. Do you think about I mean, I know you're a big Kirby fan. I know you have a lot of Commandi art.
Yeah, I've got whatever I could find, really.
Yeah. Now, did you buy any from him personally?
No, I didn't buy anything from him personally.
Or
No,
Mike Manley?
and barely met him. Met him at a couple conventions. Have no cool stories. It was always like, oh, you've got to meet Jack. I got to introduce you to this young creator, Erik Larsen. He's got a lot of your energy. And then, you know, Jack would say something that I could barely hear because of the crowd. And that was it. You know, it's like I met Steve Ditko up at the Marvel offices too. And it was like, that was no conversation to speak of. It was just like, oh, hey Erik, here's Steve Ditko. He'd come into Terry Kavanaugh's office like, oh, hey, I'm good friends with Robin Snyder. He's a buddy of yours. That was about it. I want to draw Spider-Man at some point. Give me some pointers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's none of that.
Yeah. I didn't meet him in person, although I did talk to him on the phone once. But the first time I actually went to Marvel with Brett Blevins, he goes, oh, that's Steve Ditko. And I turn around and the elevator door closes. So I didn't, and I remember running down to the lobby,
Wow.
right? And the elevator door opens and there's no Steve Ditko. So just like the question,
Wow.
Steve was
Wow.
not there.
Hey, Erik, before we run out of time, I would love if you could bless us with some artwork from your studio. How's that sound?
Oh yeah.
All right. What do you want to? I've got some. I mean, some early Dragon stuff would be like, this is the size I was working on in the early days. Like, here's a page where Dragon meets God.
Yeah.
So this is how big I was working initially, and this is, and then sometime when I started doing the. And at some point, I moved to doing twice up. So then this is, you know, just to give you the difference in size here.
Jeez.
Like that to
Yeah.
be like this. And so those got to be kind of unwieldy big.
Yeah.
But, you know, fun. The idea is the interior box here is the size of the old twice up. So that's what, 12.5 by 18 and a half or 3/4, whatever. So then I can bleed. I'm not bleeding on this page, but like here's a page where I am like bleeding at the top and doing Kirby dots and all that fun stuff.
No, did you like working twice up? Did you like drawing that style?
I liked it. But what would happen, especially if you're doing like a big figure on something, is you kind of lose the proportions.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm working up here and now I'm working down here, and then you pull it back and go, oh, that doesn't really hold together real well as a figure.
How much did
Here's a fairly recent cover that had North Force on it. But you can see like Dragon's hips are really small.
Yeah.
So like, oh, God damn it. So that's just because I'm working so big that you just kind of lose some of the.
You have to have a cigar in your mouth to balance that out.
Yeah. That's right. Anyway, I was also doing double page spreads. I would do those as single sheets.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So here's like one with a big old fist on it.
Oh my God, I love it.
So I mean, yeah, like this fist is compared to like a regular human being hand. It's just gigantic.
That's
like a
That's amazing.
So, Erik, how much time are you?
Another one.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
big old guys coming up out of the ground.
And we talked a little bit about you trying to scan like these giant pages.
Yeah,
a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, even with this with a big scanner, like I've got an 11 by 17 scanner, but what ends up happening is I would have to go, okay, I'm going to scan this corner, then I'm going to scan the middle, then I'm going to scan the edge, then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to scan this edge, and then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to go, 1, 2, 3 more scans, and then I get the other edge and get that, and then there'd still be a chunk that's missing in the middle, so I'd have to open up the whole scanner and press it in the middle. And then I use something called photo merge in Photoshop to piece it all together. But it's like 9 scans just for a single page. And it was like, that's too much work. And even the regular twice up pages, they're too big to scan easily. So I would have to turn those. So those 4 scans for every page of those.
Wow.
And I was finding that I was kind of losing, like I was having hip issues where the hips were kind of too tiny when I was doing stuff so big, and some proportion issues. So now I've moved to kind of a middle size, like this is the middle size I'm working at now, which is smaller than the twice up, but bigger than this regular smaller size. But it's just, I'm hoping that it's like, all right, maybe this will be better.
When you were doing those giant pages, how much more time were you committing to that one page because it's so big versus you drawing?
Well, it's twice the real estate,
right? So
it's physically it's twice that. I was able to use a brush more than I'm because I hold a pencil like a monkey, so it's like I'm like a toddler just like screwing around with stuff. So I was never able to do super good brush stuff because I just don't have that kind of motor control to be able to do that, holding it the way I do. But I thought, well, if I'm working huge, I can just have it be kind of crappy and then it'll reduce down and it'll tighten up. And that did happen. So that part was better. I think it's probably maybe 1.5 times, the time it would take me to do a regular page. So it definitely took longer. But there's trade-offs. It's like, oh, this part's better, this part's worse.
Right.
And then I did issues where, not every page was twice up, or I would do, okay, some of these are going to be small, some of them are going to be big. I did, the problem with like working huge like this is if you're doing like, I'm going to do a page it would be best if I have a close-up on somebody's face. Mm-hmm. That thing's a mess if you're working that big.
Yeah.
It's just parts are going this way and parts are going that way, and everything just kind of gets out of whack, and you're turning it over and looking at a light box and going, holy shit, everything's all over the place. And I can't do I don't have the kind of control to do like a long, smooth line on something. Mm-hmm. And I was finding that an issue. Like I had this close-up I wanted to do on Maxine Dragon, Malcolm's wife. Mm-hmm. And her hair just looked like absolute ass. It was just terrible looking. But then I was like, I could do this page really tiny, and then it looked fine. So there was a couple issues there where I would just be all over the place. Like, this page needs more space, I'm going to do it huge. This page needs no space, I want to do it really small. Mm-hmm. And I don't think nobody called me on it and said, like, I'll bet you I can figure out which pages are big and small.
Right.
Right.
Because like some of them look, it worked fine, and some, anyway, I haven't found a way that works yet, and I've been at it for 41 years or so making comics.
Why don't you talk a little bit about your tools? Like what do you like to pencil with? What do you like to ink with? Has that changed?
It changed when I was inking my own stuff as opposed to penciling for somebody else. When I was penciling for other people to ink, generally I was using a harder lead. When I'm penciling for myself, I was just like, everything's going to be a standard #2 pencil. And so I'm been full on #2 for the last 30 years or so. But before then I was using harder leads. So yeah, I guess even pages I was penciling for people 20 years ago at Marvel when I did some issues of Thor and Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's been 20 years ago now.
And Eric, you were never a
20 years goes by like that.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Eric, you were never a coal erase guy. You were always a straight graphite.
What I would used to do is I would use those color erase things to do my roughs, and then I would do pencils on top of that so that when somebody else was inking it, they would know which lines I meant for them to ink. But I don't like the surface that those things put down. It's kind of waxy. If I'm giving it to another inker, I'm like, it's their problem. When I'm doing it myself, I'm like, no, that's my problem. I can't be dealing with that.
Are you starting with thumbnails, or how when you're starting a page, it's going to be that gigantic? I'm picturing that photo.
Yeah,
of
generally there's no thumbnails when I'm working that big. I just whatever hits the board is going to be on the board. And I would rule out like 30 pages and then probably draw most of those 30 pages, and 20 of them end up getting, because I would start a page and it would be like, oh, this isn't working at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would just set it aside. I'll start another page and do that, and then that will get finished. And so there ends up being, I got stacks and stacks of unfinished pages.
So
and
you don't do little layouts and like Gil Kane, or
I work every way there is. I have done it, right? Sometimes I'll do. I remember one time on a plane ride back from some convention, I had one sheet of paper and I laid out an issue on that, and it was really tiny little panels.
Yeah.
But it was like, I only have the one, so I got to make the most of it. And then other times I'll do small little layouts that I did. And then for a while there, I was like, I'm not capturing whatever magic was in those layouts is not finding its way onto the page. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start just laying things out on the page. And then if it doesn't work, toss those aside and, erase them later or whatever, or just make an ungodly heap of unfinished pages. So I've got that too, where I've got just stacks and stacks of stuff. And then occasionally one will work its way back into, what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I'll just be like, hey, wait a minute. I did that page for such and such. I can work that back in again. That cover rough wasn't so bad after all.
And what about inking? Because I know, tools have changed a lot in 40 years.
I'm not happy with anything, is how it kind of works out. I've been using a 102 and just Black Magic ink, which I don't recommend.
Not anymore.
No, it's and you go to erase it and everything's smearing and it's just a freaking disaster. But I haven't found anything that I'm super happy with. I'm not happy with the pens. I'm not happy with the ink. I've done some digital stuff I'll do on occasion, just using this, I don't know, you call it Wacom tablet or Wacom tablet or whatever the hell anybody calls it.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of that, figuring I've got literally thousands of pages of original art. If there's some stuff that's created on this.
Yeah.
You know, that'll work out.
So, Eric, how were you at this point? Because I know you have a lot of, as we enjoy the stack here at Pencil to Pencil. How are you kind of keeping all that stuff straight, or how are you archiving work in your studio, or you just have piles of paper? Right?
Oh, I have piles.
Yeah.
I have huge stacks. So
In
yeah,
order.
I mean, I can't turn my thing without everything blanking out.
Yeah, it's all right.
You can barely see it in where is it? Right?
Yeah.
You can see like there's a heap of art from top to bottom there. That's I don't know if that's probably there might be like 30 issues.
So if you're
and I've got hundreds of issues of original art in my house.
So does it keep the archiving a little awkward when, especially say you have twice up and then you have different sizes in the same issue? Like, how do you put all that stuff together?
Yeah, that's a weird stack. I didn't do that for very long. I just did a couple issues like that. So that stack it's like, once there's a bunch of more pages on top of it, nobody's going to notice.
Well, talking about your process, David has another question from YouTube. It's a good one. How tight are your pencils? And what's your approach?
My pencils are cave art. They're terrible. There's like it's all structure, it's all form, and very little in terms of the details that go into stuff, because it's like I know that part of it. There's no reason for me to sit down and draw every hair on Dragon's forearm in pencil.
Right.
That would be a waste of time. Same thing with like if I'm drawing a tree or a bush in the background. It's like whoever erased a tree and redrew a different tree. I got to redraw this boulder. Like, what are you, an idiot? So you just come in and you go, let me do the basic shapes of things that need to be here. A tree is going to take up this space, and that sort of thing. Get my structure down for the head shapes and stuff like that. And there's Chris Iliopoulos weighing in.
Hey, Chris. Yeah.
I couldn't tell where to point the pointer to. Is that a man or is that a pile of garbage? But when I'm working with letterers on stuff, I would always I do send them a guide as to where the balloons go. So they would get my balloon placement for everything, so they know what the hell they're looking at, kind of. But even in that early stage, at that point, I just want to get stuff lettered. So I would send it to them, and it could be circles for heads. And then I would get it back. I would turn that into something closer to what a head looks like before I inked it. So it can be a real mess in terms of the way I'm working, because it'll be like, I'm penciling bare bone stuff. Now I'm going to ink whatever I can ink. Okay, I can't ink the rest of it because it's too rough. Now I'm going to pencil some more. Now I'm going to ink that. Now I need to pencil a little more. And depending on what it is, because like sometimes it really needs some work, and then sometimes it doesn't. So it's really all over the place.
Go ahead, Mike. You're going to say.
Well, I was going to say that keeps the energy that you were talking about that you would have in a rough, because everybody complains about that. You do the rough has all this juice.
Yeah.
Because it's a sketch, right? And there's an energy that when you tighten it up, which is sort of a European thing too, because I remember Ricardo Villagrán would always say to me, why do you pencil so tight? Because he draws super loose, and then he draws it when he inks it. I mean, he lit like
yeah. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm because otherwise you get this real duplication of effort,
Right.
which is like, what the hell are you doing? And that's, the old school comic book thing would be, the pencilers weren't doing super tight pencils, and you're expecting the inker to put that finish on it and make it a complete page. It's sort of likening it to running a relay race that, used to be that the first guy would be running around, and he'd hand the baton to the other guy, and then the other guy would run to the finish line. And now it's two guys chasing each other down the beach, and the second guy trying to make sure that he steps in every step that the first guy stepped in. It's like, and they're both getting to the finish line. It's like, Jesus Christ, guys, this is like way more effort. And the inker is just expected to follow your lines with this precise, like, geez, leave me room to play. As an inker, if somebody's giving me super tight pencils, I don't want to ink that. That's no fun.
Well,
there's nothing for me to do.
Yeah.
Where do I get to bring myself into this? I've got nothing I can add. So, give this to somebody else.
Yeah.
I want Gene Colan. I want just like, what the hell am I looking at? I got to turn this into a drawing. I don't even know what this is. This is crazy. It's all like side of the pencil and what the hell? Am I turning this into a zip? Am I turning this into a texture? Am I filling this in black? What am I doing here? I got all these decisions to make. That's fun to ink. Going over somebody's meticulously drawn stuff, it's like, oh, I am the wrong guy for that job.
Yeah, I inked Michael Golden once, and his pencils are so perfect. You could just turn up the contrast.
Yeah, just scan this in the way it is.
Yeah. And I was thinking, like, when somebody pencils that tight, maybe somebody like Terry Austin sort of has that. He has that line, so he adds.
He's got an interesting line, and he'll add something to it. I thought John Beatty inking Golden was pretty neat looking. He brought something to it of his style, and some guys who didn't have the chops that they needed to have could just wreck it too.
Yeah. So do you want
hand that over to Mike Esposito? He'll hook it up. It's like, holy crap! What happened?
Have you?
But he's long dead.
Would you want? So then, would you want an inker to do the same thing when they're inking you? Add a little.
Yes. These days, especially, when I started off, I wanted somebody who would trace me. But at this time, I'm like, if I want exactly what I do, I'm not going to hand it to anybody. I'll just do that myself. Why do I need somebody else to do what I'm going to do to this page? Give me Bill Sienkiewicz. I want to see what the hell he's going to do with this.
Right.
Because, he's going to play around with it and have some fun with it. Klaus Janson inked me on some stuff and was like, yeah, bring it.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, this is a super talented guy. He's got all these tricks up his sleeve that he can bring to the table. And like, yeah, more of that, please.
Erik, we have an interesting inking question from our good buddy EJB. EJB asked, and maybe we'll get another Todd voice out of you. When collaborating on those Spawn issues, how did you feel about Todd's choices on his second pass of digital inks on top of your inks?
They're not the choices I would have made.
Mm-hmm.
But, I wasn't expecting them to be.
Right.
I sent him in stuff that was inked, but it was inked with a Pentel rolling writer. Because because the first issue that I had done with him, which was just a pure fill-in issue 199, I had done in pencil and then Todd inked it digitally, and so I had original art that was just pencils, and I was like, well, that doesn't even look like a finished anything. What the hell?
Mm.
So the second time when I was doing a run on the book, I was like, I'm just going to send you in stuff that's inked, but it'll be inked with this dead line with a Pentel, and then you just add whatever the hell you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases he was adding all sorts of crazy stuff that I didn't think added anything or make any sense necessarily. Todd's one of those guys who kind of does lines for the sake of lines. They're not really defining a form or a shape or anything, but he just is like, oh, I just need some detail over here. Let me put some stuff. Oh, this will be good. Kids will love it, you know. And it's like, that's awesome, buddy.
Yeah,
but
right.
but you know, in my own mind, I'm like, why are these lines here, and what is the purpose of these lines?
Right.
They're not really establishing a texture. They're not defining a form. I basically don't understand his thought process. So to me, it's just like, it's baffling to me. Like, I don't understand what these lines are doing. I mean, I don't know. So it just struck me as, okay, this is kind of weird, but whatever. I don't give a shit. You know, I'm doing his book. He wants it to look a certain way. It's pure work for hire. You know, I'm not sitting here going, oh, I own this and I'm gonna, you know, it's like, no. This is it's a hired gig, and you know, so he can do with it as he sees fit. And his last issue, he hardly added much anything. I don't know what the reason was for that, but he really backed off in that last one. I think it just the clock was ticking or something.
Yeah, I got to ink you once on an issue of Spider-Man. I inked a few pages. I think it was I inked a few pages. It was like one of those jam issues where they
yeah.
hand out pages.
I don't remember you inking me on that. But yeah, some of those was like, we're just handing these out. We're just dealing these out like cards. It's like I got to have like Jack Abel ink the page, and John Romita would ink a couple pages, and it's like, okay, whatever, man, awesome.
The character that had a whip and like some sharp shoulder thingies.
Okay.
And but it was fun. I think your stuff would be fun to ink, because you can play around with the line weight and the texture, just sort of like, you know, what Klaus would do over Gil Kane. You know,
yeah.
he would.
I love that. I thought that was an awesome combination.
Yeah, and it's funny
See,
because
the sun has just drifted in front of my house.
But you don't get that. But you don't get that quite as much now. That unique combination.
No. And you know, and inkers don't have as much of a personality because there isn't room for them to have that much of a personality. So, you know, it's a trade-off. And now, you know, because of that, colorists really have much more of a impact on the look of the page, because the inker, I mean, there's jobs now when you have 3 or 4 different guys ink a job and you can't tell where one leaves off and the other one started. Whereas in the 70s, Jesus, man, if you got a Klaus Janson page next to a Tom Palmer page, next to a Terry Austin page, them are some speed bumps right there. I mean, holy crap, that is really different looking stuff going from one guy to the next. Like, hey, Carmine inked an issue of Nova. Did an issue of Nova. Like 6 or 8 guys inked it. Like, man.
Well, you guys, I mean, that was something the image really sort of helped revolutionize was the coloring.
Yeah.
And did that change your idea of what you could do? You know, from what you were doing at Marvel, where you were just you're hoping that it looks good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, everything about it's like, oh, suddenly we're being printed on nice paper. Oh, that, suddenly you're dealing with, even things like the line screen is different from what the line screen was back in the day. Like when I was working in Marvel and you would put down Zipatone on something, they would be scared shitless because they would go like, well, what color can we put in combination with this Zipatone where I'm not going to get this weird moire effect?
Right.
So often they would go, we're going to put a light blue under every Zipatone. And what ended up happening is it was like, this is supposed to be a shadow, but now this is the lightest thing on the page. What the hell? This doesn't work at all. And now you put down any kind of something like that, and they'll just color it like it's anything else. Like, oh, it's being colored as though it's a shadow. And it works out great.
Erik,
plus, you're using Photoshop, and now the line screen is going to be super tight.
Right.
But I've had problems even with what we have going on now. So,
Erik, do you still use traditional zip, or do you do like computer tones now for?
It's
zip effects?
Almost all computer tones now. I have some zips left over. Most of the good stuff's been picked through, and the zips are fucking just like, when am I ever going to be able to use anchors, or which is just, hey, weird close up on wood grain. When can I use this weird close up on wood grain? I can't just stick that in a background. That's going to look terrible. So, I was in Japan, God, I don't know, 20 years ago, long time ago. And I bought just a ton of Zipatone then. And then since getting home with it all, it's like a good chunk of it I haven't really found a decent use for.
Yeah.
Occasionally be like, oh, I can make this somebody's dress. This will be all right. But even then, what was that?
I think Deleter makes Zipatone. You can still buy the sheets, but they're not the big sheets. They're like A4 size.
Yeah, it's like this.
It's like 8.5 by 11, so you can't get a really big sheet like you used to be able to in the old days. So what I did is I scanned in some old zips that I have, because I still had a few big sheets. But if I work in Clip Studio, you can do the zip. Although you can't do the reverse zip, and they don't, as far as I know, they don't have the light to dark zip, which I like. The Cloud used to use, Tom Homer used to use.
You can do all those effects in Photoshop. It's super easy.
Yeah,
super easy. Yeah, and I make my own Zipatone in Photoshop constantly. But it's like you can just do, when you're saving stuff, you can just go, okay, I'm going to convert this to bitmap, and when I do that, you can choose, okay, do you want to do 50% threshold, or do you want it to pixelate, or how do you want to do that? Just choose your poison, and it looks the way it looks. But even if I was drawing something in Clip Studio, Photoshop's not going to be my last pass anyway, because Clip Studio doesn't have a bunch of stuff that I want to do. And plus, it's all RGB too. It's not CMYK. So I need to do all my coloring in Photoshop. because RGB, if you're converting from RGB to CMYK, it messes up every color. Your yellows are going to get a little bit of blue in them, so everything's kind of green.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sitting here going, I want this to be 100% red, but you've colored it in RGB and then you've converted it over. It's not 100% red anymore. So, you know, so I'll have guys do flats for me, but I'll have them do like, just make everything gray, so that when I get it, I'll decide what colors everything are and make it into whatever. And even that, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just going to say we're going to start wrapping up because I don't want you to be in total darkness by the end of this episode. So we have a couple more questions, and then we'll let you go, Erik. This is fantastic. So there's a couple questions about Ant, and that's a whole other conversation. But our good buddy L. Jamal Walton asks, how does the process for Ant differ than that for Savage Dragon? And then also Andy Kuhn says, I love the rough edge style you're doing in Ant. I hope somebody asked you about your work on that story.
Well, that because I worked on Spawn with Todd, and I was doing pages where I was inking them with that Pentel rolling writer, like I said, which gives you a dead line, which is kind of that European style, like, you know, Tintin or Mobius or whatever. I mean, it's kind of its own animal. So I was thinking, well, when I do another book, I'll just ink it with a Pentel, and then fill in whatever blacks with a brush, so that it has a different appearance to it. I just didn't want to have two books that looked identical to each other. And also, I decided I wanted to color Ant, and so that's, you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to do flat colors, and then, you know, make some interesting choices. And so it's a real different approach in terms of writing it. At least initially, I had kind of more of an idea of what I needed to do and what I was trying to fill in. But going forward at this point, I'll probably be somewhat similar to the Dragon process, other than still inking it with a Pentel, probably.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Jamal.
Are you doing it art large, or are you doing it smaller?
I'm doing it the middle size.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's not. I'm not really. The only thing I've been doing twice up recently is doing covers, and then you know, depending on what it is, if there's some special project that I feel like, you know, like I did a Spider-Man story a couple years back, and I did that all twice up, just because I was like, I want to do it this way. And then I did a Captain America story, and that I did smaller. I didn't do it twice up.
Well, I see there's also a question here from, again, David on YouTube. David Peterson, thank you. I hope the Savage Dragon is the theme of the Baltimore yearbook at some point for Baltimore Comic-Con. It'd be fun to draw some of those characters. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
It's out of my control. They do what they want to do.
To that point, Erik, how much are you traveling after the lockdown?
I haven't traveled since COVID started. So I haven't been to a convention since early 2020. So I may go to New York this year, and if I do, that'll be the first one. But I haven't done a convention in a long time.
Yeah, that's.
Do you miss it?
No. Miss having a sock drawer full of cash, but you know, I mean, other than that, you know, I can buy cheeseburgers on the sly because my wife will know.
So, I had a quick question about your convention commissions. Because I know that's a whole other thing where you see people just like lining up before the show starts in front of your
Mhm.
table. And how do you feel about just kind of like banging out commissions for a whole weekend, or would you rather like to like take them home with you? Like, how do you feel?
No, I never want to take anything home. No,
Okay.
definitely not home.
Yeah.
Because then you have to deal with mailing shit, and I don't want to
Yeah.
ever mail anything to anybody.
It all comes back around. I love it.
No, I can't deal with the mail. I don't want to. And I tell people, look, I'm going to get this done by the end of the show. It is your responsibility to pick it up. Because if you don't pick it up, I'm going to have this available at the next show, and you've already paid for it.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. So if you can't find your way here by the end of the day Sunday, and I stay to till they're kicking people out the door.
They're ripping the rug out.
I will get everything done, no matter what it is. I was feel like I'll be working late. But I'm a maniac. I'll just be like, I don't care. I'll do 35, 40 commissions a day. I'll just be like, I'll go nuts with it.
Wow.
So Eric, you don't have a cutoff.
It's terrible, but what?
You don't have a cutoff when you're like the back of a backing board. It's like, okay, I have 5 slots.
I will get concerned.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But I have yet to go to a convention where I wasn't able to do everything. I think there's been times where I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
But I think I may have at 1 or 2 shows had to tell some people towards the end, like, I'm not going to be able to get to it. So you can't get on the list because there's no way. But I mean, it just, some of those get to be, because I'll have dealers be like, oh, we've got all these blank Venom covers. Can I get 20 of those? And it's like, just do headshots. It'll be super fast,
Okay.
and it's like, well, all right, away we go.
Do you enjoy blank covers, or would you rather just do boards when you have stuff sitting in front of you? Does it matter?
The beauty of blank covers is they can't be very good, and so because they're not very big, so
Right.
it's like I can't go to town and make this as detailed as it would be on a 11 by 17.
Yeah.
Because it's too small. So therefore it's going to have to go faster, and it's going to be a little rougher than it would be otherwise.
When it's a convention sketch, what are you drawing with?
I've either the Pentel, which is a favorite, and I've got a couple other pens that are either skinnier than that, and I've got some Japanese markers that I've been using that I have no idea what they're called.
Yeah.
Because none of it's in English on the package. I'm like, all right, I don't know what this is, but it seems to work okay.
And how do you feel about the whiteout pen? Are you using those at all?
I use those because they do that thing where they kind of skip when you go too fast.
Yeah.
I like using those, so I'll use those on regular pages when I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So those, it's regular pages. Usually it's 102 for the majority of it. I'm using a brush, and that's what's the brush that everybody uses? I use that one.
The Winsor Newton or the Pentel?
Yeah, Winsor Newton. Everybody's like, oh, I use Winsor Newton Series 7, number 3, or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I guess I'm using that.
You're not as good as they used to be, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it, but I'm holding it like a goddamn caveman, so who can tell? Plus I never buy new material, so all my brushes look like they've been in a blender anyway. It's like, oh yeah, is the point nice and sharp? I don't know which one. There's like 6 of them. So, So mostly I'm just, it's absolute chaos. I'm just doing the best I can and then having to fix everything around it.
That's fantastic. So you don't, how often do you do home commissions? Or is that like you just don't have time to do that stuff
Nope.
during the year?
Nope. The only time I do commissions is at conventions, and that's it.
That's really smart.
I've done a couple of cover recreations at home.
Yeah.
You know, it's not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
But I can charge a, grip of cash for it.
That's my favorite unit of currency. I love a grip. Yeah.
Yeah, I like one grip, please.
That's right.
But it's like if I'm going to sit home and do like a cover recreation, it's going to be like $3,000 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. You got to.
And it's and I don't want to do it. Even that, it's like nah.
Right. Yeah.
Erik, we're going to get you out of here, brother. We're going to get you out of here. So this is the last question, and then we're going to turn out the lights.
Right.
Our good buddy Eternity Forever asks or posits 300 issues coming up on Savage Dragon. Do you plan on being the first American comics artist in Guinness? The others are Canadians and Japanese. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, whatever. There's been a couple of guys who've done 300, so when I get to 301, it'll be like, oh wow. But I mean, Dave Sim had help. He had a guy doing backgrounds for most of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the other guys kind of wrecked their runs by starting over or doing something else. So I can write it in such a way that I'm the winner, based on this technology. Technically, this guy didn't do this because he started over, and his second run was 50 issues, and then he reverted to legacy numbering. It's like whatever. How many comics did he do? He did 300. Okay, good for him.
There it is.
All right.
Mike, you got any last words for Erik?
I was just wondering if, since you're so busy, do you ever draw for fun, or is it all on the board? Is it all for production?
It's all for production. It's almost entirely for production. So I do have a drawing. Whatever you call those things.
A sketchbook.
Sketchbook. That's the word. I do have a sketchbook. Sometimes I'll do layouts or thumbnails in there, trying to work stuff out.
Yeah.
But almost everything is with the idea that it could see print at some point. So even the sketchbook is like, well, there's still drawings in there that may see print. The drawing I do for fun is sometimes just on the backs of pages, because I'm like, whatever. So a lot of art you flip over and it's like, oh, there's Batman showed up on that one.
That's
Yeah.
Do you have a warm-up process, or you just sit down and go?
I should have one, but I don't. No, I just sit down and go. And I mean, my warm-up process would be, I'm not going to ink faces immediately. I'll start with drawing these bushes and draw a bunch of rocks and stuff like that, so that I get that stuff going.
So you sneak up on it. Sneak up on the face.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm not going to draw some lady's face first thing in the morning. This is like, oh, that's a disaster. It's just like at conventions, the first commission is almost always like, yeah, this isn't pretty. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. I think Dick Giordano told me that he he would start same thing with the background. He would, you would start with something that wasn't important, like if you just that fold up or those pants or that belt or whatever, and then you sort of get into.
You work your way towards it, and by lunchtime, you're doing pretty girls.
I think that's a great place to end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Erik, we had a great time talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest. We'd love to have you back, maybe sometime in the future when the stars align. I hope you had a good time tonight. This was really fun catching up with you.
Normally we get to the origin story. You got to come back. We got to hear it.
The origins. What like how I broke in, that sort of thing?
Yeah, the whole thing from first comic to where you are. So we've got to have you back.
Yeah.
All right.
He was like, all right. Thank you.
No, that story, you can just any other podcast I've been on, that story's out there.
All right.
Because that's like the basic level stuff that people are like, how'd you get interested in comics? Like, really? You're going there?
It starts that way, but then every time you'll mention the one book, and then we're going to spend 15 minutes talking about the on that book.
I was so into this.
Yeah.
It was fun working on that Fantastic Four stuff you did. You did.
Oh yeah.
For that was fun, and then Bruce Timm inked my stuff. That was great.
Yeah, that was a fun idea that didn't quite turn into what I wanted it to, but nobody quite pulled off Jack.
Yeah.
I wanted it to look just like an issue of the FF. But like I was reading my son Fantastic Four comics at one point as bedtime stories. And I thought, oh, this would be cool because I'm going to get to, I'll just get to 100 and I'm just going to slip in World's Greatest Comic Magazine and just reading that as though it's the same thing. And he, as a small child, went, this isn't right. That's not. He could tell that it wasn't Jack at that point. It's like, oh god damn it! If I can't fool an 8-year-old, then
that's fantastic. All right, we're going to get out of here, you guys. This was Pencil to Pencil. Right. We're here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. And Erik, you can't leave because we got to do a thing. I hope you do it.
All right.
All
right. I'll do the thing.
All right, do the thing. For my co-host, Mike Manley, Steve Conley, I'm JAMAR NICHOLAS. This was Erik Larsen. You've been soaking in it. Thank you guys so much. And we're on our way out from a pandemic, but I think it's still imperative that you wash your Kirby hands. Put your Kirby hands up, Erik.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, that's good. That's a good foreshortening. I love it. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
All right.